What's going on there, everyone? All right, I'm going to drift away from the American politics a little bit and talk about the European Union elections that are coming up. As we all know, this is a highly contested situation going on in Europe and the UK. My personal opinion is the EU is terrible. It's awful for every country that's in it. You're taking away the sovereignty of nations. You're given a group of leaders who know nothing about these particular nations as a whole, and they're just completely destroying the culture and history of Europe. They are globalists. These people that are pro EU don't realize, I don't think, the implications of being pro EU and staying in the European Union. I mean, you are fundamentally giving up your country's rights to govern itself, to be governed by a body in Brussels that doesn't really care about the citizens of these countries. They're globalists. They're just, don't get me started. Don't get me started. But an interesting article on the left-leaning website The Guardian, which I generally try not to get too much information from The Guardian because it does lean left, but that's okay. You got to go, sometimes you got to go straight to the source of lefties to see what they're talking about and how they're going to swing narratives or whatnot. But this is a pretty good article. It's not too based, so to say. Pro and anti-Brexit parties neck and neck in EU election, says polls. Survey also finds 3 in 5 Britons say politics is broken in both Westminster and Brussels. I would say so. Watching the news that's been coming out of the UK, it's very, very disturbing to say the least. You have pro-Brexiteers and whatnot sitting here throwing milkshakes at the opposition leaders like Nigel Farage, Carl Benjamin, Tommy Robinson, pretty much anyone who is not for the globalist EU is being attacked. Yes, it's just milkshakes. Understandable. I think some kippers for the Americans watching. That's little fish. It's like salted sardines, or But yeah, it's not really that violent. But still, you can see if they're willing to do these type of things, they're going to be willing to escalate into real violence. You already have some people throwing rocks and bricks and whatnot, so it's an escalation. But on to the story. 3 in 5 British voters say politics in Westminster or Brussels is broken, according to a poll that finds pro and anti-Brexit parties are running neck and neck ahead of the European election on Thursday. The survey shared with The Guardian by the European Council on Foreign Relations found Britons nurture some of the highest levels of political disaffection in Europe, with 60% of those polled saying that the system in the UK and the EU is broken. Only in France and Greece are levels of disenchantment higher. Now, when looking at this chart right here, there's one thing I want you to notice. Look how upset left-leaning governments in Europe and in the UK, look at how upset they are. These are the people. This is how they feel. They are not happy. When your levels are this high of disenchantment in a lot of left-leaning governments, it kind of lets you know something about left-leaning governments. They're not all that great. People really got to start opening their eyes to this stuff. It's very important for even people who are moderate leftists to understand There's just some things that shouldn't happen. And being pro EU is one of those things that just shouldn't happen. Not surprisingly, disillusionment is highest among voters intending to support pro-Brexit parties on Thursday. Nearly 90% of those intending to cast a ballot for Nigel Farage's Brexit party supported the broken politics view, according to the survey of 1,600 people conducted by YouGov. That's a lot. 90%? That's a lot of people. And I know a lot of people aren't exactly fans of Nigel Farage, but he is y'all's biggest hope. I personally like UKIP myself, but they just don't have the traction yet. They're a relatively newer party. I mean, they're not that new. They've been around for quite some time, but they're relatively newer in getting ahead and getting up there with the main parties. So that's pretty good. I think they're going to have a pretty good future once people get their head out of their rear ends and can kind of see reality for what it is. Britain's participation in the European election has taken on an aurora of farce as would-be MEPs campaign for seats, even though the UK voted almost 3 years ago to leave the EU. Deadlock in Westminster has prevented Theresa May, treasonous, government from enacting a withdrawal deal it concluded with Brussels. Theresa May has been one of the most biggest upsets I think anyone has ever seen. Any conservative type. One thing I've learned is y'all conservatives in the UK are completely different than the conservatives here in America. We are very much further right in our and actually conservative in our views, in our politics and policies, and just the way we think about things. The conservatives over there in the UK are very, very left compared to American conservatives. That's a big clarification for those of you in the UK watching. When we Americans call ourselves conservatives, we are not your conservatives. Just point blank. We are much more to the right and much more conservative in nature. Y'all's conservatives over there in the UK are more like our centrist Democrats, like our liberal, like moderate liberals, not progressive liberals, but the moderate liberals. The impasse has infuriated some corners of public opinion. The poll found 1 in 4 people hoped the European elections would result in nothing less than a revolution in the EU, compared with 14% who hoped the 23rd through 26th of May ballot would allow to a vote of confidence in the EU. That's not going to happen. That's one thing I can promise. There is not much confidence in the EU. You're seeing a lot more member nations question the EU. The EU, if we are lucky, will be disbanded within the next decade. Y'all really, over there in Europe and in the UK, need to get rid of the EU. They're destroying everything over there. It's been pretty sad to watch from here in America, to watch such a beautiful and historic area like the UK and Europe as a whole be destroyed by these globalist politics. It's heartbreaking. But the contest between pro and anti-Brexit blocs in the UK looks likely to be every bit as closed as it was in June 2016, when the campaign to leave the EU won a narrow victory. I think that margin is probably actually grown since 2016, because all the problems that the EU brings have not gone away and have, in most cases, gotten worse. The Brexit Party is on course to secure twice as many votes as any other party, according to the YouGov ECFR poll, which gives Nigel Farage's party 33.4% of the votes, which is awesome. Good job. People are starting to remove their head from their asses. That's a good thing. The survey found that 17.3% of voters intended to cast their ballots for the Liberal Democrats. No, don't do that. 16.1% for Labor and 9.2% for the Green Party. These people obviously do no research and don't pay attention to anything that's going on. These are the parties that are trying to divide further your nation. The Democrats, Labor, the Green Party. The Green Party is nothing but they should be called the Red Party because they're more communistic than anything. We have the Green Party over here, and these people are retarded. And I mean that literally. They're not that smart. They are retarded in the way they think. Their mental capacity is retarded. The Conservatives are in 5th place at 8.3%. Like I said, y'all's conservatives are not conservatives. They are liberals. They are centrist liberals. Taken together, all major anti-Brexit parties, including Change UK, the Scottish National Party, and Plaid Cymru, probably destroyed that, are given 37.5% of voting intentions. The Brexit Party and its protagonist, UKIP, are 36.1%. This is fascinating to me. This is a good, positive. Everyone should be happy about this. Everyone who believes Britain should be independent and all that should be happy about this. Pro and anti-Brexit parties are running neck and neck on the eve of the European elections. Voting intentions for those who will definitely vote, excluding don't knows. Look at this chart. Two parties which mainly make up the pro-Brexit, they do make up the pro-Brexit. Two parties, UKIP, which is fairly small, and the Brexit Party, which is pretty huge now. Look at these two parties, 36.1%. Total anti-Brexit, 37.5%. Look how many parties are involved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plus. 7 plus parties, and they're only making up 37.5%. Look, this is beautiful. This is an amazing thing to watch. People are fed up. They're fed up with the government not listening to the will of the people, trying to dictate everything for the people. This is how you will get rid of that. You have to vote. Leave the EU. Get the hell out of there. It's the best thing you could do for your nation, is to get out of there, bring the power back to the people, bam, and get rid of some of these mayors and stuff you got banning everything for any reason. Mark Leonard, the director of the ECFR, said, rather than engaging in a conversation with each other's ideas, voters seem to be retreating into two camps whose divisions become ever deeper and more unbridgeable. The big sort, the bifurcated American politics and society is becoming the defining feature of political life in the UK. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. The survey shows Brexit bifurcation runs deep through the heart of Conservative and Labour parties. Asked whether membership of the EU was positive or negative influence on Britain, 20% of the Conservatives said it protected Britons against the excesses and failures of national government. That is a treasonous thing to say, in my opinion. While 54% said it held the British government back from doing what was right for the country. That's exactly right. That 20% of conservatives, those people are out of their damn mind. Those are not conservatives. Like I said, I hate that they're called conservatives. They need to change it to something else. I think it possibly used to be called the Tories or something. If that's the case, it needs to go back to the Tories, because conservative just doesn't explain them. In all, 52% of the Labour supporters saw the EU as a protective influence, compared with 16% who saw it as a drawback. In all other majority parties, opinion came down to distinctly one side or the other. This polarized election will punish those parties who are not clearly in the Remain or Leave camps, said Leonard. it should punish everybody who's in the Remain camps. These Remainers are, I don't get where they're coming from. There's so many treaties and everything else with so many different countries that aren't necessarily part of the EU, where Britain's going to be fine no matter what. I don't know why you got some of these, I like to say Ramoners, because it's pretty funny to me. These Ramoners, they don't realize that this isn't, leaving the EU won't really do much negative impacts. It's not. Y'all are Britain. Y'all are one of the most important countries on this planet. I think y'all are like the world's 5th biggest economy. You'll be fine. All the Remainers out there, you'll be fine. You will be better off because you can go back to a Britain first type policy instead of trying to work with making everything equal for the EU. Screw the EU. They're screwing you. They're taking all y'all's money. They're taking y'all's freedoms. They're taking. That's what they do. They take. They don't give back. Think about it. You get rid of that, you don't have to keep giving. You can keep yours. Use it for your own people. Come on. Use common sense. These one world type people, these globalist leaders, they're not about people. They're really not. They're about power and control. They're dictators, authoritarians. These are people that you don't want to deal with. But so what we're seeing here is what it looks like we're seeing here is the Brexit party, pro-Brexit parties are getting the majority of the votes and the confidence of the people. You're going to have your hardliners that are anti-Brexit, but those people are generally not that educated on the matter. And when they are really educated on the matter, you can tell they're just propping up globalist narratives. Do yourself a favor. Do the world a favor, Britain. Get out. Get out. Y'all know what y'all have to do. You know who you have to vote for. You know who you have to vote for. I look forward to seeing the power of the people in Britain. I look forward to seeing Britain become a sovereign nation once again, for real. So, if anyone's over there watching from the UK, I would love to hear your comments. Open up a little bit of dialogue. Whether you're pro-Brexit or whether you're anti-Brexit, put out your opinions. You know, comment on the video. Let me know how y'all are feeling. You know, I want to hear from the people. I don't want to hear from just news and media sources, because we all know how media sources can be. They don't often tell the truth. But as always, like, share, and subscribe, and I will catch y'all on the flip side.